Hi, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Digicel Masterclass series. I'm your host, Terri-Karelle. So good to have you. Here we feature the pioneers, the trailblazers, the masters in their fields and at their crafts. And they have taken 60 minutes out of their day just to spend with us, to impart their wisdom, their knowledge, and their expertise with you to help you take your business or your brand to the very next level. Now, with everything going digital these days, it was important to us to speak about, well, digital transformation. And we had to invite an innovator in that field. And she is none other than Aileen Corrigan, Chief Digital Officer of the Digicel Group. But before we speak to her, we just want to thank you and just tell you that we appreciate each and every one of you who registered for free via digicelbusiness.com. And we have great news. Some of the masters, just like Aileen, could be your mentor, but the only way you will get that opportunity is if you register for free via digicelbusiness.com. And of course, we'll have more details for you afterwards. Now, if you haven't registered yet, that means you better get it done as quickly as possible. Now, we always look forward to your participation, so bring on the questions, bring on the comments, and just make sure that you use the hashtag Digicel Masterclass, hashtag Digicel Business. Now, besides being the Chief Digital Officer of the Digicel Group, Aileen was recently recognized by the Constellation Research on its 2021 Business Transformation 150. What does that mean? Out of 150 persons, or I should say 150 persons who've been driving digital transformation, were noticed, acknowledged, recognized, and yeah, she was actually one of them. And that is the reason why she's here, because she's been driving digital in the Caribbean in a very stellar way, and she was doing digital long before it was even cool. Now, before she came to the Digicel Group, she held CEO roles with Newcom Live and Trend Media, and was instrumental in making Loop News the most downloaded news app in the Caribbean. So we know how super important it is to understand digital and to understand digital transformation, especially with COVID-19. And so we have the master herself here. Get your pen, get your notepad, get your tablets, whatever it is you have, because the class is now in session. Aileen, welcome.
Thank you so much.
How are you?
I am wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
Before I dive into the questions,
Yeah.
let me just say congratulations. It's the first that I was hearing about this Constellation Research, and you being one of the 150 persons recognized for being a mover, a shaker, an agent of change. How did you feel when you got the news?
Oh my gosh, I couldn't believe it actually. When they reached out, it was during COVID, and they had said, congratulations, you're one of 150 people across North America, and actually the only person in the Caribbean to be nominated. I was absolutely blown away, and obviously honored and humbled by it, because I think anybody in their business, no matter how hard you work, no matter how much you put in, you always don't really realize that other people are looking, and you think, you know what, I'm just getting through my day.
Yeah, you just do your job.
You just do your job. And you know what, to be recognized on such a platform for me was just a really proud moment. I was really delighted.
It's a good look. And as you speak about being recognized as the only person in the Caribbean, let's just take a moment to talk about how just a couple weeks ago, Digicel came out with this great news. It's now a digital operator.
Yeah.
What is that for some persons who might be listening going, well, what does that mean? And how big was it for you guys?
Yeah, it's what does a digital operator mean? It's really about a change. It's how do you reimagine your business? When we started on this, and it's not something that we started a few months ago or something that we started a year or 2 years ago. It's been always there, right? But we really realized that as a business, in order to stay relevant, connected to our customers, you have to look at some key things, right?
Absolutely.
And part of that, we really had to look at ourselves, and taking a hard look in the mirror is not always easy. And you have to go, you know what? Yeah, I have to, shake off a few things. Any business who have been in business for a while, you end up building more and more things. And so you need to look at your technology. You need to look at, okay, am I doing things right? Am I investing in the right things? is my technology updated? Because, over time and technology changes so quickly.
All the time.
And, how do I make sure that when technology changes, I'm continuously keeping up? How do I make sure that my people are, really understanding what I'm trying to do? How do I make sure that my customers are feeling what I'm trying to do?
Right.
From a mindset point of view. How do I really get into processes? And for me, this is one that I love, because most people automatically think digital transformation is about technology.
And that's what I was going
it.
to ask. I was going to ask if, digital transformation persons might be watching. A lot of the persons are at different stages in their businesses, and they might hear the term digital and go, oh, I got to be a coder or a developer. What were you saying about digital transformation?
Yeah, and it's not about just one thing, right? It's the whole package. You need to be looking at your business. And you were asking about, Digicel and why we became a digital operator. It was really about what are our customers doing, right? And we realized, and telcos around the world, not just Digicel, everybody had in telco space, we were very reliant on voice and data, text
messages. That's all
messages.
we knew, and that was what we did.
And that was the space, right? And we did it really well. But what were our customers doing? And our customers were using content. They were using different platforms. They were using Facebook and Twitter and
different
LinkedIn,
formats.
Different formats. They're also, from a business point of view, using email. They're using, different cloud storage, solutions. All of these things our customers were doing.
Right.
But were we in the right space? And so we started off on a journey, and over the last 2 years, we have looked at our technology, and from that, we had to make some hard decisions. And in every business, you have to go, is everything really meaningful? Is it adding value?
Is everything necessary?
And so we had to go, you know what, we're going to stop doing some things to reinvest, because nobody has $1 million to throw from the tree, right? So you have to go, what am I going to invest in? And if you realize that this is the future, then you need to go, you know what, that's where my money should be.
Right.
Because if that's the future and that's what's going to pay the bills, then you got to stop the stuff that's not going to bring you the
And it's worth the investment.
Right? It's worth the investment.
And based on what I'm hearing you say as well, it sounds as if even when you speak of digital transformation, it doesn't mean that you should just become digital for just being digital's sake, but you have to listen to your customer, understand your customer, and understand that as your customer changes, you have to meet them or be wherever it is they are changing.
And that's it. It's about meeting customers where they are. Customers' behavior has completely changed. When you look at 5-10 years ago, people were happy to stand in line for a long time, quite happy to send an email and wait for a response, or phone a customer care and maybe be online for X. That is not acceptable today.
It is not even expected.
Exactly. So when I tweet about a brand and they're not getting back to me, I'm upset. If I want to find something to solve my problem, I want to be able to go online and find the problem. So how do I start, as a business, we started looking at what are our customers doing?
Right.
What are the biggest pain points for them? And how do we start getting our processes, our technology, and then getting our people around that to start meeting our customers where they are?
Lovely. Now, which companies, international or local, do you think has done digital transformation really well, besides the obvious, Digicel? Are there any other companies that you could say, I can see where it did well?
It's so funny. There's so many examples of different elements that have been doing really well. I don't think any business does anything 100%, right? Because everybody wants different needs and wants and things like that. So you're always trying to adapt. And more as people become more and more complicated.
Correct.
Keeping it simple is becoming even more of a challenge. And that's actually, I think, part of the whole thing about digital transformation. It's about simplicity. How do you bring simplicity to a very complex, at times, solution, right? And so when you look around, where are people doing it well? I think there's a few ones that everybody will jump off and say, yeah, I know them really well. Well, look at Amazon, right? So they started as a book company, and their need was, how do I get my books online? How do I start providing a simpler way to get distribution to my customers?
Correct.
And then they realized slowly but surely where their skill set was, hey, we're actually a distribution company. Well, we don't have to just stick to books. We can actually add on other
Diversify.
things. And now look at what Amazon does throughout the world. So they've done it extremely well. I think, interestingly, I'm really interested in the banking environment. I'm a follower of what's happening in the banking space.
Right.
Interestingly, I think Scotiabank has done a really good job in the Caribbean in really trying to shift people online.
Right.
Changing behavior is extremely hard.
Change, period.
Change, period, right?
Period.
And people really don't like changing their habit. That it's part of our nature as humans. We also like, I like going down to my branch. I know the teller behind, the counter. We have a little banter.
And it's tangible, because I think even I've heard persons say, money is very tangible. They want to make sure that they see it go across to the teller and they feel some sense of comfort and ease knowing it happened, rather than digital that is, where are you?
Where is it? And so changing that behavior, and especially when it's people's money, that's a hard thing to swallow. But I think they've done a very good job in establishing some key things about what do we need to do. And they started on the journey of developing an application, looking at the top type of transactions that people wanted to do. Then they looked at partnering with telcos to zero rate the traffic, so that, automatically people will go, why would I use this bank when it's going to use up my credit?
Of course.
And I want to use it for...
That's another issue.
Exactly. So I want to, use it to use Facebook and whatever. I don't want to use it to bank. I mean, that shouldn't cost me money. So they did a very smart thing by going, it's not going to be a charge for you. But if you come into a branch now, it will. So they changed, if you come into
the incentive changes.
And it's amazing how people change when there's money behind it, right? And there's a reward.
It's a good driver. It's a good driver.
And so I'm quite interested in it, and that's a local example. But I'm quite interested in banking across the world, because I think that's an interesting space. And more as if you look at the Caribbean and people in the you've got family in the States and Canada and remittances and there's people in university in Guyana, etc. More and more, how do I get money? How do I pay my school fees? How do I, and especially with COVID, this whole thing of, I used to go into my branch, I can't do that anymore.
So how can we facilitate seamless, efficient, convenient, remote transactions? You just mentioned COVID-19, and unlike companies like Digicel, who, for example, your digital transformation was already happening years before. It was just a time coming. It just happened to, manifest and coincide with the pandemic. But with COVID-19 really showing businesses their weaknesses, what do you think, or how has COVID helped in terms of getting some initiatives for digital transformation happening?
Yeah, it's, COVID took everyone by surprise. When you look at the world over in a 2-week period, everybody was suddenly stuck in their houses. Kids were suddenly out of school. Parents were suddenly turned into teachers. People were, their whole world was thrown into chaos. And I think the first reaction is actually the human piece, right? So if you look at, and I just know from my team and colleagues and friends, I think the biggest thing when you look at what happened in the first few weeks in COVID was the mental health thing, right?
Absolutely.
And the biggest piece was, how do we, as brands and companies and people who are invested in our communities, how do we make sure we give back and help to give people that strength, right? And that's where I think digital really helps. And it was really great to see so many different brands coming to the fore, helping to donate, need it be, tablets, connectivity, From our point of view, we put educational series on our home and entertainment Digicel so that people can watch, because not everybody has tablets, and so many people don't have access to a computer.
And we saw how the education industry was completely turned upside down and showed where the inequities were across different households.
Absolutely. So how that was a key thing, and that became extremely stressful for people. And I think that's where, from a health point of view, we saw a lot of doctors go online. We started a lot of people being able to, how do I use apps for fitness? Yes. I think the interesting piece was suddenly, because everyone was confined to their houses, everybody suddenly took up fitness. Everybody everybody had been, hadn't been to the gym in I don't know how long, but suddenly everybody had to be a Zoom class or a spinning class or download the latest, app that is trying to keep fit. And I think that was directly related to people's mindset. Right. And I think that's also part of the digital transformation for so many companies. I was so proud to see, especially small businesses, how they were agile in getting their business going, even when COVID was happening.
Is that an advantage in terms of being a small business where you don't necessarily have as many people, you don't have as much change or shift happening, and because you are a small business, you're usually accustomed to working with very little, that it's always a hustle, like you always have to figure out how to be agile. Do you think it is actually one of the advantages of being maybe a small business at a time like this?
Absolutely. I think the one thing about digital is it puts more of a playing field, right? So, you might be a small person, but if you've got an app or a software or a platform or a technology, people who are dealing with you don't know if you're one person or 5 people or 20 people, right? And so, a lot of times it's giving small business actually a leg up to be able to go, hey, you know what? I can
compete. I can reach.
And especially in a time where people are hit financially, especially for a lot of businesses, their shops are closed, they're not bringing in the income. Looking at how am I going to pay the bills, and a small business can say, you know what, I can actually help you because I'm not going to cost what the big firms are. So I think for a lot of the small business, they've been able to become much more agile, and also be able to do those small changes in change just to be able to meet what they're seeing going on.
Right. We're actually going to speak about the culture and the larger businesses, because they took a longer time, and some of them are still taking a very long time to catch up with COVID-19 and this digital transformation. But let me ask, what is the secret sauce to doing digital transformation? And is there this secret sauce? Because sometimes, in all honesty, we hear the term digital transformation and it scares the bejesus out of a lot of us. We think of this huge, mammoth, expensive, oh my gosh, I'm going to go into ruins, and by the time I buy this software or this app, it's going to be outdated by tomorrow. So is there a secret sauce? And if there is, could you kindly share it with all of us, please?
You know what? If there was a secret sauce, I'd like to know. Give me the recipe and I'll start. And it still scares me when I hear that word. I actually don't like that word. And why? Because it does feel huge and big and massive. And no matter if you're a big business or a small business, I think the biggest thing is, are you ready to meet your customers where they are? And starting with one change, you're on that transformation. And I think it's hard for people to get their heads around that. But if you think about what your customers are going through, picking their biggest pain point or even their littlest pain point, just a pain point, and think about what is causing that. Is it a process? Is it a technology? And then going after that. And if it's just one thing that you've done to fix that, you've actually started your journey.
And that impact could be astronomical.
And it could be astronomical. You just don't know how much of it is. But even if it doesn't have that big a change, the point is you've done it. And then you need to do it again. And you need to do it again. And so when you think of digital transformation, what I'd like people to take away is think of a lot of little things. What can you do every day to change the difference from before? And for a lot of businesses, there's a lot of business owners I've spoken to who are terrified of, you know what, I'm going to buy this technology, it's going to cost me unbelievable amount of money in CapEx, and I just don't have the turn. Well, that's the great thing about digital. And now it's the cloud. And now, by putting everything in the cloud, I can actually scale my business. So I don't have to pay for potentially where I think my business is going to be in 5 years. I actually just have to worry about tomorrow and next week and everything, and the cloud will scale it for me.
Right.
And then I can proportion that. So if my business, I do have to downsize, or I have to shift, and I have to, maybe contract because of seasonality, so the cloud is there.
Right.
And the great thing about, digital is a lot of the technologies, you're going to get the automated updates.
Right.
So you're not investing in that hard, servers and technology that ends up being in a closet.
Absolutely, and I just want to remind everyone, because you might be hearing us speaking about clouds and you might be going, what?
Yeah.
So I just want to remind our viewers there, don't be afraid if you have any question, and we want to let you know that we value every single question or concern you may have. So go ahead, send in your questions, and make sure that you use the hashtags Digicel Masterclass and hashtag Digicel Business, okay? But we're even talking about value and even using digital, transformation. You were saying sometimes it's the little things.
Yep.
And sometimes we were saying, I was actually speaking to a business owner, and we're saying sometimes it could be just automating a process. It could be automating your email,
Yep.
where you don't have to sit down and take hours responding, because then you could divert that energy
Yep.
and that and just attention to something else. So what you're saying is that digital transformation is not necessarily an overhaul.
Yep.
It's not necessarily buying a ton of new technology, but figuring out what are the little things that I can change that can still be impactful
Absolutely.
to my customers and my business at the bottom,
Yep.
the bottom line. Okay, and how about authenticity? We spoke about change. We spoke about the fact that digital transformation has to take place when there's buy-in.
Yeah.
It's this mindset shift. And so for companies that are larger or older, the ones that we call legacy companies, they've been doing these processes forever. It's been working fine for them, but now there's a shift.
Yeah.
Now there's the culture. Speaking from experience, is there any advice or any tips that you can give to persons if they're in a business and they have a team that they need to get the buy-in from? How do you get the buy-in to do digital transformation?
Mindset shift is I would think one of the most critical pieces of this, because when you think about it, technology can be purchased, right? You can buy it, and someone else can put it in, and
install,
and implement, right? Processes, technically you can outsource that. You can get someone in who goes through the process, but it's your people, right? Your people are your heart and the heartbeat of a company. And if you don't get them on board, and if they don't understand what you're trying to do, it's just going to fail. And when you look at, they say 91% of business transformations fail. Why? Largely because of mindset, and it's the drive from the top down. A lot of times I've seen in different companies along the way is they say to a person in a department, you know what, you're responsible, and it's usually
we're doing this,
we're doing that, and it's usually poor IT. They usually get the brunt of, hey guys, you're going to do it. You're going to lead the way, and the poor CIO or CTO has to go, okay, yeah, I can do the kit and the cloud and think of the technology, but it's not. It's HR. It's commercial. It's your finance team.
Every
it's
touch point.
Every touch point. And the only person that's going to really drive the business is the person at the top. And if that person does not fundamentally make it uncomfortable, you're not going to see change. Because just like what we saw with the whole shift, is that people are not going to change their behavior unless you give them that, why am I doing it? What's the incentive? And what's the benefit for me at the end of the day? And that is where you start to see mindset shifts and people understanding the journey and why are we doing this. If they just see a bunch of changes happening, Like, oh yeah, IT is working on a project.
That becomes IT's thing.
IT thing.
Has nothing to do with me.
Yeah, HR are doing some training. Yeah, I'll go along and great, fantastic. But if you don't join the dots and give that overall look and say, this is what we're trying to achieve, it's going to be really difficult to bring the whole business along.
Right, absolutely. Now you mentioned that you can purchase technology. You can outsource. You can get the right people to come in and to implement and to install. So, for the persons who might be watching, who might be mompreneurs, solopreneurs, they're trying to do their thing in the space. They might be going, okay, so I need to build out a team. Do I need to get a team? So I'm going to ask you, as the Chief Digital Officer of the Digicel Group, are you a coder? Are you a techie? And if not, how did you even fall into this space?
Yeah, interesting one. No, I'm absolutely not. And I must say, all the techies, I drive bananas because I ask all those stupid questions, right? I am the customer. I ultimately, as the Chief Digital Officer, I see myself going to the other departments within my business, and I'm the customer. I want them to supply me the changes that I need in order to drive this change within this organization. And I am certainly not a techie, and there's a lot of things that I've had to learn. And there's a lot of things across the whole project of doing this that I've had to learn, and I think that's scary. Like I'm not afraid to say that. Did I know everything? Was I an expert in all the areas? Absolutely not. But I asked the questions, and I surrounded myself with people who knew.
Right.
And my job every day was to absorb the knowledge and then help to try to pull it together so that as a business we were still seeing that vision of what we were trying to achieve. So my advice to somebody who's doing it is, don't worry about having to know all the coding and technology and the latest software and what does transformation mean, and do I feel like I have to invest lots of money?
Right.
Nobody knows your business better than you do, right? And you know your customers. And if you don't know your customers, well, that's probably the best place to start, is start asking your customers, what's bothering you? What do you like? What do you want to see change? And start getting that feedback. And once you get that information, actually, you'll start realizing there's actually a lot of stuff within your control without any investment to help you start with that change.
As well as feedback. You mentioned a very important word there, and it's sometimes, even if we don't ask for feedback, we realize in the dawn of social media, you actually have customers who are giving you their feedback, and even though some may be complaints, and it's really not always nice. It's a little bit uncomfortable seeing someone say something negative. I've always told persons that when a customer comes out and takes the time to send a feedback, whether it is positive or negative, it means at some point in time they care for you to do better.
Absolutely.
And so I think businesses should take that and not take it personally, but go, we might be missing something here that this particular customer is bringing to our attention.
Absolutely.
So if you're not a techie, not a coder, not a developer, you ask the right questions, then the question would be, what was your background?
Yeah, interesting. I'm a little bit of a jack of all trades. I've gone into a lot of different businesses. I think at the heart of what I love to do is I'm a kind of a startup type of person. So while I've been in Digicel a long time, I've also pretty much been working in the startup businesses that we've gone in.
The new business,
the new businesses, and then obviously I worked in Trend Media and starting Loop and getting that. There was a team already there that started it, and then we brought it on. But my background is predominantly marketing and retail and distribution. So I actually did industrial relations in college, which is...
I didn't even know industrial relations was a thing.
Well, you know what? And the reason why I chose it was, again, I liked a bit of everything. And it had sociology, it had economics, it had business. And what I really liked about it was, how do I engage with people? And industrial relations was all about negotiations. How do I bring people together?
Right.
Now, I just thought it would sound really interesting. And I ended up getting into the retail industry and building retail chains. And I was able to merge a bunch of retail chains together and start creating and building. And actually, one of the things we were chatting about is, back in 2003, there was the iPod was just coming to the market.
Which was new because everyone was accustomed to their CDs. Sorry for the persons who were just born the other day. CDs were a thing, right?
Yeah, we used to stick them in, and suddenly there was this thing where it had the hard drive and it had all your music on it. And I was working in a telecommunications company, and we decided, hey, you know what? We've got phones, but we're seeing this big move towards people using content.
This behavioral change.
And we didn't think of it anything different at the time. We just thought, hey, it would be kind of cool to give it a go. And thankfully, I had a really visionary boss who said, yeah, you know what? Let's do it. And we created a store, 100% digital, nothing printed. So we didn't have pricing cards. There was no leaflets. Everything was digital.
And this would have been
a while ago.
a while ago, which meant that this would have been way ahead of your time, really.
Yeah.
How did you deal with, and I think this is a big question, even though we're talking about digital transformation, we're talking about this change, this huge thing that you have to do. You have to get the buy-in, and even if you are not the coder or the techie, you still have to surround yourself with persons who can guide you along. How do you deal with the moments of, did I bite off more than I can chew, or is this too big? I don't think I am the person for the job. How did you overcome? And I think a lot of our viewers may really have that as one of their biggest stumbling blocks.
If you don't feel that way, you're not doing it right. Because remember, change is uncomfortable. And if there is not moments where you're thinking to yourself, have I made a mistake? Have I made a mistake? Have I taken too much? Have I gone and done something silly and stupid and everything else? Then I don't think you've gone far enough. If you're feeling you're going back at the end of the day and you're able to sleep well, you're not making enough of a change.
You're probably a little bit comfortable.
You're probably comfortable.
You're safe.
And think, for transformation, to really make that step change, you need to go outside of your comfort zone.
What are some of your top maybe 3 biggest lessons that you have learned on this journey? Learning for yourself what needs to be done, tweaking, changing, altering, going back to the drawing board. What are the top 3 or maybe 5, if you even can think of 5 lessons on this journey of digital transformation?
Yeah, your plan will always change. I am a person who likes structure. And I do like things a certain way. And for me, that was really hard, because there were days where, you put out your plan and you're thinking, yeah, that's it. That's what we're going for. And then you come in and you go,
nope,
you got to rip it up. You got to rip it up. And, there's been lots of times where in my mind, that's it. I had it crystal clear. I had it. And then someone comes along and adds, really valid points. And I think the second piece was having more inputs from the start. Because when we started, there was only a few of us, and we were kind of brainstorming, and as anybody does, you kind of get into yourself.
Right.
And then you kind of come out and you realize, okay, there's a lot of people around, and there's a lot more information, there's a lot more inputs, and a lot of perspectives. So I think soliciting the key stakeholders earlier on, I think is really important, and identifying who are those people that are going to help propel you. You need people who are going to be advocates, because on your low days, when you're feeling like, oh my God,
I can't do this,
you need those mentors that are going to turn around and say, yes, you can.
Absolutely. If you could go back, we always ask them, I think we asked Nasha this question. Somebody asked the question, actually. They asked, any regrets, but that's not the question. If there is anything you could change, looking back, you've had this goal, you've had this target, you've had this plan, you launch it and you go, wow, we got it done. I know you have a moment to sit back and relax. Is there anything you would have done differently? And if so, why? If not, why not?
Tough one. Yes and no.
Yes and no, okay.
Yes and no, because yes, there's a lot of things that I said, looking back, you're like, oh, I shouldn't have said that, or I shouldn't have done that, or etc. However, every single misstep I learned from. And I think that's really critical, is you're never going to get it right? It's a journey. It's, you know, a transformation is an endpoint. It's not, you know, you get it launched, or you get to a point and you say, that's it, okay, job done.
And simple.
And simple, and you go back to, you know, it's not. It's forever happening. It's continuously changing, and you know, this terminology of digital transformation, as I said, I don't really like it.
You
Why?
like reimagination.
It's reimagining, because you're reimagining how your business is going to start performing going forward. And it's continuously changing to adapt to the customer journeys, what you're trying to serve to your customers' behaviors are going to continue to change. So it's putting in place, how are you going to make sure that you're ahead of the curve to be able to agile, change, adapt your processes, all those things that we spoke about.
And to continue to serve with value.
Do it, you know, and you know, after 5 years, there's going to be changes that you've made now that you realize, you know what, they're not fit for purpose.
Right.
But the good thing is, because you're on this journey, it's not going to be a big thing, a mammoth thing that's sitting there. You're going to continuously bring it into that shorter cycle to really think about, okay, you know what, let's stop doing that and keep on doing this.
And it also sounds to me that you just have to always be open. You spoke about the mindset, but it clearly shows you that you have to be open to change. Yeah. You have to be open to the idea that maybe you made a mistake, but maybe it can be fixed. And if it can be fixed, how can we fix it? How quickly can we fix it? What can we use to fix it? So I think having that openness to receive is extremely important for any type of transformation.
Yeah.
So we have some questions via social media. We're going to dive right into them. From IG DJ Phoenix, thank you for participating. He asks, or she asks, do you think when the world reopens, the trends in consumer engagement will shift back to where the world was tech-wise?
Oh, good question. You know what, I think we'll see some bit of bounce back. Because again, I think people naturally, there's also this longing of, you know, I've been forced to do a certain thing, but you know what? I think there's going to be a lot of things that people are going to go, you know what? I'm not feeling that as much. And I think we're going to see a lot more trends in customer behavior stick more than what we think is going to bounce back.
Okay, and that's a good point. I do think that there will be persons who, as you say, are longing to get back in the space, just to be around people. So maybe events, you know, they might have a bounce back because people miss the energy of having other persons. But I can tell you, as a consumer, having more businesses go digital, making things more convenient, where I'm ordering, you know, groceries and groceries are coming to me, whereas I don't have to necessarily go and walk through aisles. There's some things that I just love, and I am totally okay with sticking to that. So it's going to be very interesting, DJ Phoenix, to see which areas we see the bounce back and which areas people say, no, we like where we are at now. We have another question. Neokia Hines, I hope I did not butcher your name, from the Webinar Jam crew. Aileen, Aileen mentioned earlier a cloud storage platform. Do you have any recommendations, or does it depend on the kind of job you or business you run?
You know, and this one, I'm gonna say, this is really when I walk into a room with all my techies, and this is where, you know, you see them around with their coffee and hours of discussion of Microsoft, AWS, like, you know what, we're going to go with this platform, this platform. You know, I think, to be honest, there's a lot of solutions out there. My preference and what we've been going through has been with AWS, and I've found that the cloud solution has worked really well for us, because as we've added and expanded, it is done very well for us. Now, other businesses have cloud solutions that they already use. Now, I'm not saying, like, pack that in. Absolutely not. What you need to be doing is having that conversation with your cloud provider to make sure that what you need to do for your business, that they're providing, and making sure that they're adapting for you.
Right.
And I think that's the key thing, and making sure that your provider is flexible, giving you the support that you need. Obviously, as well, I think it's worth mentioning as well, making sure, especially for small business, making sure security, because you know, as businesses, as we go online, a lot of people are going online fast. They're not looking at, you know what, it's a whole new world, and there's a lot of people out there waiting to take advantage. And so I think one of the key things is also security, making sure that when you move your information to the cloud, that you're doing it in a safe environment, making sure you're using a cloud platform that is secure, and that you're not opening up to anybody obviously attacking and sabotaging.
I actually appreciate that statement right there, because a lot of the times in this digital transformation conversation, because we've been in webinars, I've sat in webinars, conferences, all sorts of things. A lot of the time the conversation surrounds, e-commerce, how you get your payments online and how do you become digital. But a lot of the times there isn't a lot of time spent on speaking about security.
Yeah.
And the only space I really see it happening is banking, because they understand that they have to be secure. But regardless of what industry or what business you have, it is extremely important to understand that as you go digital, it is important for you to also make sure that you are increasing in your security. Billo. Billo, what is a billo? And I don't think that's Spanish for bill. So what is a billo? B-I-L-L-O.
Yeah, Billo is like our pillow in the cloud. Billo is our cloud storage application that we launched as part of our ecosystem recently in our launch.
Nice.
And the reason we did this was, and a lot of people ask me, they say, well, Aileen, there's Google Drive,
all these different platforms.
I've got all my stuff stored there, and Google gives me 15 gigabytes, and it does. But when you look at the Caribbean, a lot of people don't have credit cards, right? And so if they want to expand their storage, you need a credit card, you need to be able to access that. Also on top of that, yes, you can save all your documents, etc. But there's also how many people lose their phones and their contacts and save things to their SIM cards, etc.
Absolutely.
And so what we are providing, especially for a huge amount of our subscribers, is a lot of people don't have storage on their devices, right? So once they download a few applications, the memory is done, right? And now what are people doing? Selfies and videos and all these type of things. It's eating up memory. And so one of the key things that our customers, when we went out there and said, what's a big pain for it was storage. And so we said, well, hold on, let's give our customers storage free of charge as part of it to save their memories, back up their contacts, so that there's a bit of reassurance. Of course, you're going to use other storage things because they're available, and if you're an Android person, it's sync that. But it's also good to have other ability to have storage and have a backup.
That's a fantastic pain point. Have you ever taken a picture, or you would like to take a picture, and then all of a sudden you get that pesky message, and then you have to go through to delete one of the videos or one of the photos that you actually want to keep, but you can't. That's actually fantastic. B-I-L-L-O. I think that's, thank you so very much for that. And you guys can totally go make sure that you Google, do your research to find out how Billo could assist you. We have another question. Janice Alexander, also from Webinar Jam. How are you doing? She asks, a big part of digital transformation is changing the culture, which we touched on earlier. She says, what has this cultural transformation looks like internally for Digicel? Interesting question.
You know what? It's a very good question.
Lots of territories.
We're in 32 countries, over 7,000 staff. It's massive. 4 major languages, and there's a huge amount of dialects. So we're talking upwards of 20 different dialects when you get into certain of our markets, like Papua New Guinea in its own has hundreds. But trying to explain what we're trying to do it was so vital, and bringing our staff through what we're trying to do and break it down into a meaningful way was not an easy job.
Right.
And so, what did it look like? Well, we had to start at the top. And obviously, we have a chairman, Dennis O'Brien, who is 100%, passionate about this. And it's no, like when I say it really needs to be driven from the top, he really believes in the digital transformation for our customers and making sure that we do the right thing. Then it comes down to our CEO. We have CEO for the Caribbean and for the Pacific, and making sure that they 100% really drive this through and explain it to our customers. I report directly into the CEO, and there's a reason for that, because if I'm not prodding him and saying,
And
hey,
communicating.
you know, my colleagues who I love dearly, but if not everybody's on the same page, you know what, I need his help, his support to get everybody on the same page, right? Then it was really about bringing the senior management. So all our general managers and country managers across all our markets, getting them on board, getting them trained, because the same thing. We had a lot of people who were like, oh, digital transformation, what does it mean? But breaking it down, what does this mean for us? And we went through it, and most of the time people are like, oh, okay,
cool.
I get it. And then it was about training. How do we break it down? So we've actually, over the last 2 years, have been rolling out different phases.
I was going to ask you, I literally was going to ask you, where the training is concerned, because even if you call Digicel, I was amazed. I shouldn't be, because I'm accustomed to the excellence that is Digicel. But as soon as you announce, for example, being a digital operator, and I call as a consumer, as a customer, and when the reps answered, they said, this is Digicel, the digital operator, and they knew exactly what to say, and I wanted to know how long in advance were they being trained and prepped, and how important is that training to happen before and not when you launch? Yeah,
it's definitely a journey, because you need to make sure that people are, one, understanding the vision, buying into the vision, but also are able to articulate that vision. And listening and digesting is one thing, but being able to then say it back and understand it and say it in their own words so that everybody understands and can communicate that takes a while. And so it was definitely a journey, but we broke it down on different chunkable sizes. At the beginning we were in the classroom.
Yes.
Right, and because that's where our people were. They were in the classroom. They were used to training. You get your few hours or day, whatever it was. You would go and you would have a trainer, and you'd go into the classroom, etc. But slowly but surely, everything went online. So we launched an internal training platform.
So you're driving the change internally in terms of behavior and expectation.
And then we started doing some fun things, and it's because just training, fine, but it can be a bit.
It gets played out after a while.
So then we started doing gamification, right? So you did X amount of small bite-sized training. So we also got away from this day training thing and start doing, what are people doing? Behavior is, we now move to bite-sized information, right? That's what we do on our phones. We go onto Instagram, we go onto Facebook, we consume content in bite size.
Right.
So then, if our staff are our customers, then we started moving that way. So what we started doing was start providing bits of information that were literally less than 5 minutes long. So bite size, and then when people were able to do those, they collected points and were rewarded for getting to certain tiers. And of course, everybody loves a good competition. So the leaderboard was, it got a little bit, I'm at the top and competitive, and then you had within your own country and across the Caribbean and across all the markets. So and it created this whole different dynamic and community.
And culture,
but in digital, right? Like everybody was on this digital community that suddenly we had moved, and then COVID hit, and so we were, we were leading up to, okay, we're going to unveil ourselves as a digital operator. We still have a lot of work to do, and the ability for our staff to transition was remarkable.
And as you said, you can't do it even if you implemented everything and the plans. If the persons did not understand and they didn't buy in, then it's a fail. It's an epic fail.
Exactly.
Congrats. I mean, congrats. Listen, by the way, Aileen, you're doing well, because questions are rolling in. We have another question. IG, Jevis World, thank you for participating. He or she asks, where do SM social media platforms stand in the digital space? And how do we ensure we merge the correct technology that is suitable for your business and target audience? So even in all of this digital transformation processes, everything changing, where does social media fit into this whole digital transformation?
Great question. I'm going to start with a lot of people, and it's not a criticism, but a lot of people think that they've gone on Facebook and opened a page for their business that
transformation.
They've transformed, and maybe for that business it is.
It might have been a big step.
Yeah, it's that small step, right? But that's not all of the digital space that you can play in. And so I think social media is absolutely critical. Why? Because that's where we are, right? As consumers, we're on it. There's a multitude of different channels. We've certainly seen a huge shift from Facebook into Instagram and to TikTok.
TikTok, absolutely.
Right, and then generations now creating. Like we're definitely seeing even social media. Depending on your age, you're starting to use different platforms. And then for businesses, I think one of the biggest areas that I'm seeing people really starting to take note of is how do they make sure that as a personal person, you have to make sure it doesn't feed into your business profile, right? Because what I do in my social channels can be seen, and people will see what I do and put out there. Just because I'm on social media, it's not blocked into the social part of me. It will feed into the business side.
Correct.
And so there's a lot of people who blur the lines, and they put a lot of social things on, let's say, LinkedIn. There's things that are, that's not in the LinkedIn space. It's, it's very much meant for business connections and for people that are serious about business. But then also from a wider space, the digital transformation in social media, it's within one aspect, but then there's the wider piece, which is then the communication space. So how am I going to communicate with my customers? Am I going to put AI so that I can actually understand what my customers are communicating with? Am I going to communicate with email and maybe other streams? How am I going to also then have automation so that my customers can actually find out things about my business before I even have to, physically go and do something? So I think social media is very purposeful when you use it in the appropriate way. And I think as a person in business, you need to think about, what am I trying to convey in that particular channel?
Correct.
Because if you're not single focused about what your tone of voice is within that channel, you'll get blurred. And even between Facebook and Instagram, your audience is different.
Right.
And so just posting on Facebook and posting exactly on the same in Instagram, you know what, it's not going to go down the same way. So exactly. I think, within social media, think of one thing, but then think about, how does it fit into my business, and what are the other channels outside of social media that I actually want to engage with customers?
And certainly social media, it should be treated as an asset to the business. It should never be a liability. And that's why you spoke about having your brand identity, your brand voice, and understanding at the end of the day what your goal is, and using it in a manner that will complement the entire pie. Very, very cool. Neokia Hines, she comes back, she says, Aileen, you were instrumental in polarizing Loop apps. What would you say was the most instrumental strategy / tactic in making that happen? Loop News app became the most downloaded app. It was new to the Caribbean. We didn't know, everyone has his or her own favorite news app. You come into the space as a new entity, and boom, there's impact. What kind of strategy or tactic were we looking at?
Yeah, we launched that in 2015. There was actually a team that actually came and launched that. I wasn't part of the business right at the beginning. I came along about a year and a half after. And at that point, we were just out there and we were finding our feet. It was really interesting how we started tweaking the levers, and this is where I think what's the difference, and what really made Loop was about the content, the localization, about really everybody knows Loop Scoop. We got there first. It was about breaking news at the moment, and that's real time. And Loop really changed and I think really shook up news in the space. Why? Because the dailies were publishing once a day. By the time the newspaper hit your doorstep, you already had it. You already knew it, because we had broken about 10 of the stories by the time you read it the next day, right? And that was the thing about digital. Nothing we did was printed. Everything was online. Our reporters had to, most of them came from the traditional reporting field. They're journalists by trade. Obviously that's their expertise. and they had to learn digital. They suddenly had to submit their stories online.
Correct.
They had to think about tagging and how do I make sure that the content
and
reads well.
and keywords.
Hashtags and keywords, and how am I going to make sure that my story ranks? Those were all learning things. And I think once we got that going with the staff to really get the tagging right and everything else, you started us coming up in searches, and then also how did we start using social media at the time was really Facebook was at the time the most prevalent,
used, right?
And then starting linking our stories into there, and was just an explosion, and especially when it was hot topics. We've seen, especially over the last few years, hurricane season. I mean, look at the weather over the last
Correct.
two weeks. People want what's happening. Is it going to rain in the next few? Is something happening? Is there flooding happening?
They want to know.
Is Gordontown Road gone and I can't drive to work tomorrow? Those are the kind of things that we realized that these were the differentiating factors, and I think that
and those
really
were the gaps that you wanted to fill.
To really fill.
Listen, I hear the questions are still rolling in, but we're going to take this last question. It comes from Janice Alexander from Webinar Jam. With the push for customers to move into using Digicel's apps / digital products, how is customer feedback currently being integrated into the product development process to ensure that customer needs are being met? Very good question,
excellent
Janice.
question. You know what? It's a really good question, because I think it's about how do you make sure that you've got loads of different places for your customers to interact. One of the key areas that we focused on was My Digicel app is really our key sort of hub, right?
Yes.
So everything you need to know about any of our apps, et cetera, is there. So you self-serve. And we've introduced a few months ago Ruby. Ruby is our little digi guy or girl. We haven't actually given it a gender, but you go in and you can self-serve, and I think that was a really good start into how do we then start taking that into our other applications? How do we make sure that we start including it so that customers are able to have that instant feedback? How can customers start using social media and hashtagging and being able to say, hey, I'm having a problem, or my service is down, or et cetera? One, it feeds information into our technical teams that sometimes customer feedback is fantastic, because it can actually get there before our systems are even kind of noticing it, because and our systems are our technical guys are amazing at the monitoring. But if a customer is, let's say, having a lot of rain and there's an intermittent issue, then that might not be necessarily picked up
instantly. Correct.
But if a customer is complaining about it, then there's the social listening that brings a whole different dynamic to just monitoring, which traditionally we used to focus on, right? So we'd have our technical and our NOC that is looking at what's happening in the systems and everything else. But we integrate then with customer feedback, what's coming in through our customer care, what's happening through Ruby, what's happening. So all of these channels now help to refine and give us way more granular detail about our customers. And also, it's that information that feeds into our product cycle, because we look at what are the pain points. Because the customers are, as you're saying, they're telling us what they want.
So it makes it easier.
And then we can start building and say, you know what, we're missing this, or we're missing the mark, let's start building for it.
Listen, thank you so very much. And again, it goes back to not just having a social media platform, but actually listening to what your customers have to say. You saw the questions coming in. Aileen, Corrigan, thank you so very much. And the person who gets you as a mentor just for registering via digicelbusiness.com is going to really strike it big. Thank you for your time. Guys, thank you for watching. Again, we will see you next week. Remember, the Masterclass takes place every single Thursday at 6 o'clock. And next week, we speak to the next master, Gary Peart, CEO, Mayberry Investments. We will see you then. Thank you for watching. Good.